Excellent. Hello, Sydney. I'm so sorry I couldn't be in person with you. I was about to board the plane and then my flu kicked in. I am now drugged and hopefully I can get through the next 15 minutes and hopefully I'm reasonably coherent. What I wanted to talk to you today is a topic I'm deeply passionate about. It's value-driven innovation in the digital. If we look back over the last several decades, healthcare innovation has consistently delivered. The average life expectancy has continued to grow steadily year on year, and a large contribution of this beyond nutrition and sanitation is actually the healthcare innovation associated that the industry has been able to deliver. And this is an industry that continues to disproportionately reward breakthrough innovation. So everything from devices of transcatheter aortic valve replacements to surgical robots to deep brain simulation. If you look at the biology side, you have gene therapies like CAR T cell therapies, as well as CRISPR and RNA therapies. And then digital health is starting to deliver as well with things like AFib detection, as well as portable imaging that Butterfly Images recently delivered. However, the one big tailwind that the industry is facing is around financial pressures. As innovation continues to add on features without benefits can just simply not be reimbursed. The projected gap between public health expenditure and government budgets continues to grow. And if today's trajectory continues, it is going to be one of the largest contributors towards the financing gaps. It's interesting that Australia doesn't figure among the countries that we have on this chart. You guys probably have something figured out, right? That you could teach the rest of the world. Big data promises to transform how outcomes are measured and delivered in this new world. This is a complicated chart, but let me try to explain from left to right. If we look at outcomes, what the New England Journal article that's at the bottom on the source shows is outcomes are multifactorial. It's not just medical care, but it's genetics, it's behaviors, it's socioeconomic factors that all come together to drive outcomes. And historically, we had a very small view towards what was driving outcomes. There was clinical data, which is less than half a terabyte in the entire lifetime of a person, that was used to piece together how to improve the outcomes of the individual. However, increasingly now, we have access to data across a wide range of sources, from genomic factors through exogenous factors, the socioeconomic and behavioral that we talked about. And it's enormous amounts of data. We're talking about thousands of terabytes for every single individual. And if you start to piece it together across all of the population, it truly becomes big data, or we start to run out of terms to define the volume of data we're talking about. And this data is messy, and it has challenges. Everything from achieving medical level accuracy to being able to integrate across multiple different sources, to being able to collaborate with multiple stakeholders who are all hoarding these data sets, to being able to coordinate and correlate the digital biomarkers with actual outcomes. However, if we figure this out, it is going to fundamentally transform how healthcare is delivered and measured in the value-centered world. Let me talk you through an example of a recent piece of work that we did. So what we were trying to do in a health system was identify undiagnosed and underdiagnosed patients. And this was for a rare disease. 75% of patients are undiagnosed. Only 3% of eligible patients are on the right therapy. And this is an incredibly painful condition. And what we did was we applied a deep learning algorithm the stuff that Google uses to detect faces in photographs or the autonomous cars use, to look longitudinally across clinical data, across 22 plus years of longitudinal data, to identify who are at most risk of being at risk for this disease. And what we found was 96% accuracy in prediction, and it outperformed not just the physicians, but also the most advanced current techniques by over 8%. Now, if you fast forward this scenario over the next decade, we are going to get into a world where AI will tap across disparate data sets to detect the disease earlier, to have a much more precise treatment depending on the genomic and other factors of the patient, as well as better measure outcomes at the individual level to ensure that you are influencing what happens to the patient. And this world opens up a range of possibilities where you start to see AI systems link diverse data sets to start to make diagnoses and treatment decisions. The first question is, how do you deliver care where the patient cannot experience the symptoms and the physician cannot explain the diagnosis? You'll have to trust the systems to be able to deliver better outcomes. In this world, are your therapies still relevant when you're intercepting diseases much earlier? And then, how do you measure endpoints and value for regulatory approval and reimbursement? After all, if your endpoints are about shrinking the size of a tumor and you're intercepting the disease before the tumor has even formed, is your therapy relevant? Are your endpoints relevant? And what value are you delivering that you're getting reimbursed for? The answer I get from different manufacturers is we'll keep pace with innovation. However, if we've looked at other industries, breakthrough innovation fundamentally changes the existing structure of the industry, and it also pushes the limits of how regulators and policymakers can react to this innovation. Look across all of these examples, from autonomous cars to ride sharing to Bitcoin that just hit $8,000 this week, to Airbnb, to Alibaba, and the list just continues. And in healthcare as well, the challenges on policy as well as on keeping pace with innovation is absolutely going to catch up. So what do you do in this world? I think you should focus on the 4 emerging battlegrounds. The first is building direct relationships with the consumer. We are going to a world where historically manufacturers went to providers and payers as well as to physicians to be able to get the therapies to the patient. Increasingly, patients are going to start to seek out the right therapy and build ecosystems around them. The second battleground is about finding new sources of value. Profit pools will continue to shift in the digital world, and you will have to try to find what the new sources of value are. The third is collaborating for complementary capabilities. Not many entities have all of the capabilities needed to be successful in the digital world, and it will take a combination of manufacturers, governments, tech players to come together. And then the fourth is industry standards will continue to emerge and change, and how do you keep up with it? Let me double click on each of these. If you look at direct relationships with the customer and the consumer or the patient, the entire journey of the individual is fragmented, and they have to orchestrate across a wide range of services and service providers to go from wellness through diagnosis, through treatment to wellness again. And the ecosystems around the individual patient could emerge by provider, they could emerge by manufacturer, or they could emerge by tech company. And it's unclear how this is going to play out, as well as who the winners are going to be. If you look at new sources of value, we're starting to see, this is the US national healthcare expenditure. We're starting to see a slow shift from inpatient care as well as housing to new ways of delivering care around self-service, around home health, around creating greater transparency for financial and clinical, as well as better self-service and virtual tools to be able to deliver care. And naturally, the value pools are going to start to shift towards these new modalities. There are several examples, everything from the AFib detection as well as the portable imaging that I had talked about earlier, as well as new ways of finding physicians and getting care. Collaboration continues to be an important theme. We're starting to see new forms of partnerships evolve between technology players as well as manufacturers, and this landscape will continue to evolve. No one has quite cracked the code on how to make these partnerships successful, but the players that will be the ones that succeed. And this is an interesting slide I have, where we are starting to see this ongoing battle between the force to commoditize the data, the insights, and the engagement with the patients, as well as the force to monetize it. So you have players like IMS and IBM and Illumina starting to monetize on the massive data sets that they've accumulated. And then in the US, you have the players like the providers as well as government trying to open up the data. Similarly, around systems of insight, you have new players that are trying to monetize the insights that they get out of the data. And then you have players, again, like the government or the payers who want to open up these insights and commoditize them. And then on the system for engagement, we're starting to see this battle emerge between players who want to control the access to the patients, as well as players who want to be able to own the ecosystem around the patients. And then lastly, the piece I want to stress on is there is also an emerging battle for talent. If you just look at the number of data scientists that are in the market today, and you look at the demand versus the supply, in a good case scenario, you can probably meet the demand, and in a bad case scenario, there's probably a deficit between the number of trained data scientists versus the number that are in the market. And this gap is going to continue to grow. And you need to figure out how you can attract the right talent to your organization, retain them, as well as keep them excited about the mission that you're focused on to be able to win in this digital and big data-driven world. These were the slides I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to give a few references. On McKinsey.com, we have a few articles that we published this year, as well as we have a big book that's coming out later this month around digital and R&D, which is probably exciting for all of you. I'm happy to connect more, and I left some of my coordinates at the bottom on the contact. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.